the elephant in the room, I mean, it's LIV and PGA Tour. And how is this going to come together? It's going to come together. It has to. The PGA Tour has made misstep after misstep after misstep in handling this, and it makes sense. I mean, look, they were a monopoly for a long time, and they played the monopoly playbook. Unfortunately, it didn't work this time, and they've had to bring in a lot of different things. And I think it's going to help the PGA Tour in the long run because, look, I was one of the ones on the player advisory council on both tours, the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour, yelling and screaming that this management team in Ponte Vedra was very reactionary. They weren't very visionary. And I think this sea change is going to help the PGA Tour get more visionary. And when you have private equity groups and those type people involved and people that make a lot of money, they make a lot of money because they have vision and they're able to see down the road a little bit. So again, I think it's been a rocky road for the PGA Tour. I'm not a fan of the signature events. I'm all for having signature events, but I don't want limited fields. You don't need to compete against LIV by acting like LIV and narrowing your starting fields. I think you can have the big money events, and I love them. I think they're great if you give the opportunities for most of your membership, at least starting out. If you want to narrow them down to 120, that's fine to start, but at least have a cut because of the spirit of the game. And 72 holes, that is the measure, the standard of golf. LIV has brought a couple of things to bear, I would say. Possibly the team aspect of it has some merit, but the 54-hole thing has no merit, in my opinion. That's the one thing I don't like about LIV, and I don't like starting a field with 48 to 54 guys. I think the best thing about golf is you have as many guys as you can get in the field Thursday and Friday. And then you can cut to whatever you want. If you want to cut to 48 and then have a shotgun start on the weekend, that's fine. But I think some of the most times that I learned the most, and unfortunately I was on way too many cut lines, but I learned the most about my game in where I was trying to make the cut and really getting my game where it needed to be to try to compete. On the weekends, and when you're winning tournaments and you're not, when you're in contention, you learn a lot there too. But you know what? Most of the players are around those cuts more than they are winning golf tournaments. And as a player, that definitely is the biggest self-teacher that you can get is how you thrive or don't thrive in that kind of environment when you're struggling coming down the stretch and find a way to hit a couple of good shots and make a couple of key putts and make that cut by one or two shots and then have a good weekend. I learned more about my game in those times than I ever did winning tournaments.
Oh, learning about your game is the perfect segue to where we're about to go in just a couple of minutes. But to your point about the merits of a full field event or even a modified full field event and having a cut, look what just took place. Stephen Jaeger, who is a brilliant player, and we were all kind of waiting for him to do on the PGA Tour what he did on the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the ability to fearlessly go low. He took down the number one ranked player in the world. So to the point where if people talk about weaker fields, okay, tell me about a weaker field. Then wouldn't it suggest that the number one player in the world is going to blow away everybody else? He didn't. Stephen Jaeger won. And so for me as a golf fan, I think that that's the ultimate thing. We saw the same thing. I keep going back to Eric Cole and Chris Kirk at the Honda. Yeah. That was one of the most entertaining tournaments of the year, and I was very entertained this past weekend because of precisely what you're talking about.
Well, but you're eliminating the Eric Kohls by making these fields like what his story last year. I love that, and I love what it did. I mean, here's a guy who was on the mini tours making as much money as you could possibly make on the mini tours, but he went through that journey and he was able to finally break through. But we're putting roadblocks for the Eric Kohls of the world. We're putting roadblocks for even the guys like Victor Hovland and Scotty Scheffler who came through the Korn Ferry Tour. We're making their time a lot longer when you're putting these roadblocks to get in the elevated events where there are more points and all the different things. That's why I say, give the opportunity, let the meritocracy of golf do its thing, because it's the ultimate meritocracy. And that's one of the things that I think is being shaved away in this environment of these, we only need 50, 60 guys in a field to make it special. you know what? U.S. Open's been special for a long time. They start their field with 156, and you know what? How many of them are qualifiers that you've never heard of? Those are always pretty good stories. So, it's not just the 50 that drive everything.
So a couple of things that we've learned so far in terms of management style: don't react, envision, and then consider that more instead of less is probably a better way to go. Okay, Andrew, do me a favor. Throw the odds up there for the Masters. Tripp, to wrap up here, because I want to make sure we have enough time on the other side of this for Gap Golf. Two guys, two names. I'll give you two from this list or otherwise for your favorites for the Masters.
You've got to say Scott Scheffler. I mean, how do you not say Scotty Scheffler? And also, who plays really good with a chip on his shoulder? Jon Rahm. We could see Nick Faldo here. I'm just saying. I think we could see back-to-back Masters champions. I just think he's got a lot to prove. That his going to LIV was the right thing, which I think it was at the time. I mean, why wouldn't you? I don't blame John at all, because he knows now there's going to be a pathway back and go take the money and play less, but still have the majors. You know what? They're going to be maybe eating tapas 2 years in a row at the Champions Dinner.
All right, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, officially in the books for Tripp Isenhour.